There's right ways and wrong ways to go viral. I had jokes go viral that led to no newsletter signups, no pre-orders, no new logins. Didn't count. We consider that literally as not going viral that month if we did not see any carryover. When you're such a small team, you don't get to do things like, oh, we have social for brand awareness. You don't know. It's existential.
I'm Ayomi, Samaraweera, and I lead internal communications here at Notion, and I was previously the founder of Canopy. And I'm here with Sara Alfageeh, who leads social at Notion and was previously the founder of One More Multiverse. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Excited to chat. I have a lot of questions that I would love to get through today, but just before we get started, we'd love to hear exactly what was One More Multiverse.
Yeah, well, the pleasure is that One More Multiverse still is a fabulous place to play, share, and make your own role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, among many others. Think of it kind of like Roblox for role-playing games.
And what inspired you to start this company?
Very frankly, me and my friends are giant nerds. And when I was kind of in my last year of college, I was at this little tiny art school in Harvard Square and had made a bunch of friends over at MIT and Harvard, went to their parties instead, and found a bunch of other fellow nerds to play video games with and try other, nerdy shows and books with. And we were really, really bad at trying to figure out how to play Dungeons and Dragons ourselves. And naturally, when you're hanging out with engineers, they want to hack their way through it.
Of course.
And the following week, after we failed miserably to try to start our own campaign, my friend was like, you know what? We'll come back same time next week. Come to my living room. I have an idea. We show up. He tells us to pull out our phones, and he texts us all a link. And when we open the link, it looks like kind of a pixel art Pokemon emulator of the characters we had made last week. And he just starts the story without any prep, without any instructions. And we're riveted because as he's talking, what's happening in the story is happening in game on screen. So all of a sudden we had this shared imagination. We could immediately jump into the fun part of the game without the friction of learning the rules. And yeah, that day we played for about 7 hours. So
7 hours. That's intense.
Yeah, and it flew by. And by the end of it, I was like, great, we have a campaign. And my friend said, no, we have something better. We have a company. And we never played session 2, but it worked out. I'm happy with the results.
Incredible. And is that sort of part of the story of how you found your co-founders?
Yes, so we were very much friends first, and when you are friends with your co-founders, the trust is really there, and you've kind of seen how they've navigated different things professionally and personally. It was a very natural transition, and we're still very much friends now.
Love to hear that. And tell me, when you were getting started, was creative growth always part of the plan when you were thinking about your go-to-market?
There was not a plan. I had never done anything like this before. I was barely aware of tech and startups as a concept. Again, my background was coming out of an art school at the time, but I was really good at social media. This was because of, my own personal, very online nature, ever since I was a teenager going viral on Tumblr. And it continued to, embolden my freelance career. So they knew I was real good at Twitter, frankly, and I had the skill sets to create the initial mock-ups and artwork that we needed. So from the get-go, we knew that connecting with our users and storytelling was going to be really, really key to our success.
And then what were some of the ways that you connected with, say, your first 100 users?
Yes, we basically lived on Discord. Discord is Slack for gamers, we'll call it, if you're not already acquainted or you don't have a kid in your life or a gamer in your life. And we learned really quickly that there was a very high learning curve to what we were doing. It was tough to explain to people what this tool was, tougher still to even explain role-playing games. And we knew that if anyone was taking a chance on us, we had to be in communication with them. So from the very first days, I wanted to know who was who was trying our platform, why, for how long, and how could I make their experience better. And I kept that attitude in from the first 50 people who joined our Discord to the first 50,000.
And then Discord's a busy place. You know, there's a lot of engagement. There's a lot of people there, but it's also kind of a competitive space in terms of finding your niche and finding your people even within Discord. What did you do to get their attention when you were trying to build and explain this on Discord?
We were really obsessed with our top of funnel. So I singularly like felt this weight and responsibility that when someone hears One More Multiverse, when they hear it from a friend or from a tweet, from a TikTok, how do they reach us? How do they get in game? And in order to kind of keep that steady stream of communication with our users, our players, that, you know, kept our attention so high and created this cult-like fan base, we had to make sure that like we understood that pipeline from hearing it to in-game really, really tightly. And about every single week, I would test that pipeline to make sure that, okay, they see the TikTok, they join the Discord. From the Discord, they have people they can play with. They're in-game. Like, it was a very, very tight pipeline. And if I was losing people at any point, I had to immediately go find out why.
You mentioned obviously TikTok as one of your top of funnel channels. Was that your main channel that we were using, or was that the most effective? Like, why TikTok?
Yeah, so if Discord held our community together, TikTok is how they got into the game, absolutely. We would have these graphs where you could tell when a TikTok went viral because all of a sudden our new user logins skyrocketed. I'm talking like vertical, you know? And yeah, TikTok was still early in the way that like not a lot of game developers had really cracked the code. I would say it was a much less busy space. You weren't competing with TikTok's own retail interests with TikTok Shop. It was kind of this golden era of growth if you knew how to package up and pitch yourself very concisely. And again, it was the same thing with even becoming a co-founder. Someone told me, let's go try this. And I said, I have nothing better to do. Let's go. Yeah. So my co-founder was like, hey, this TikTok thing seems interesting. Go take a weekend and figure it out. And I said, sure, why not? If not me, then who? And it was very, very successful for us.
And what year was this when you were starting to use TikTok as a sort of growth channel?
Peak Panini, peak pandemic, baby. 2020, 2021.
The glory days of TikTok.
Yeah. Everyone was deliciously online.
I love that. I miss those days.
Let me tell you, like, getting into online gaming was very hard to pitch until the pandemic hit our last week of our Y Combinator batch. And then all of a sudden, everyone understood why you'd want to socialize online.
When you mentioned obviously going viral and seeing that growth suddenly spike up when you did go viral on TikTok, what was going viral like? Was that 1 million views? Like, what did that look like? And then do you have any stories from like that first time you went viral? Like, how did you do it? How did you crack the code?
Yeah, so our definition of going viral was very strict in our company. Anything below, I would say 750K views did not count. And my PM who worked alongside me in marketing was very tough on me. I might have been the co-founder, but he really managed marketing with a very strict iron fist. And no, it was very strict. 750K or it's not viral. The engagement rate has to be about 1 to 6. So 1 like to 6 views. It had to be very, very strong engagement. Can't go viral for viral sake. And we really stuck to that sentiment of there's right ways and wrong ways to go viral. I had jokes go viral that led to no newsletter signups, no pre-orders, no new logins. Didn't count. We consider that literally as not going viral that month if we did not see any carryover. When you're such a small team, you don't get to do things like, oh, we have social for brand awareness. You don't know. It's existential, you know? So if it's not driving growth, exactly, right? If it's not driving growth, what are we doing?
And in terms of driving growth through TikTok, was it you creating the TikToks? Were you on TikTok? Did you work with creators, like gaming creators? Like how did you again like how did you do this? Like, were you super scrappy and was it just you and the team making the content?
It was me in my own house with an iPhone and a dream and a lot of screen time recorded. Yeah, I was the face of our TikTok. I was the person who people would first see when they got in the game. I don't think majority of people even knew that I was a co-founder because I would also run these kind of onboarding sessions for people who were highly interested. They had joined our Discord community and I'd walk them through like what you need to know for the first 30
Right.
minutes of your game. And they were like, "Oh, you're Sara from TikTok." And I'm like, I
Cool.
do a few more things, but sure, I'm
We'll
Sara
go
from
with that.
TikTok. As long as you're here, I don't care what you call me. So I
TikTok
was
famous.
perfectly, yeah, I was perfectly fine with that. And I didn't really grasp that not only was I in front of new users, I was actually in front of my peers as well. And so when I
Right.
went to my first GDC, which is the Game Developers Conference that's here in San Francisco, I would have people stop me and be like, "Our team studied your strategy. Holy crap. Like, we looked at every single TikTok you guys have. Like, you have to tell us how you're doing this over and over again." And I was like, "Oh, damn. Like, I'm not really registering that I am now like
The
contributing a
face.
playbook
Right.
to this game dev community too."
Incredible.
Yeah.
Would you recommend to founders to be the face of when you think about creating content and like building the brand and
hmm
driving top of funnel? Would you recommend founders to be the face of their brand and company?
I do a fair amount of consulting with startups and game devs. And if you are someone who is highly energized by being online and talking to your users directly, no one knows your company better than you.
Right.
And so oftentimes I have to tell people, like, you want organic reach that badly? Guess what? It's your problem to go and figure it out. You almost can never outsource this role because it's your job to know what hook works, what line works, what screenshot of your product works, what use case is the thing that gets people paying attention to you. And you can't really offload that onto anyone else because it's so critical to your company, especially at an early stage.
For sure. Often, I will chat with founders and they'll ask a question around, hey, I really need to be on social media. I want to have a TikTok strategy, but maybe partly maybe a bit camera shy, partly,
hmm
oh, does it make sense to do this ourselves? Is it a good use of time? Should we, pay creators and get creators to do this? What do you think there's ever a time to bring in creators to be able to scale your content and reach different audiences? And if so, what stage is that? When do you transfer from being like the founder making the content, being super
hmm
scrappy, to then starting to engage and obviously potentially pay for creators to build and share content for you?
At the end of the day, the content creators will only be as good as the comms you've given them, the assets you've given them. So you still have to do the work upfront or, pay an agency to figure it out for you, a much
Right.
more expensive option that I would not recommend to someone who's, very keenly aware of their runway, for example. But yeah, you still have to do that upfront work. You still have to make sure what are you putting in front of people that really catches their eye? What pitch actually works? And you have access to so many free channels all the time to test that amongst your peers and amongst your users. And it's another reason why you have to be in contact with those early adopters
Right.
because they will pitch your product right back to you and they will tell you exactly what got them. And then you just, then it's a matter
Go
of
from
volume. And then you can bring in the creators, put in the paid marketing, and all of that.
Just before we wrap up this sort of conversation on driving that top of funnel
hmm
growth through TikTok, could you share one campaign that went viral or this one moment that truly like shifted the growth for the company based off one video?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I know exactly what video that is. It
Of
is
course you do.
6 seconds long. It is highly embarrassing to me personally. And it is the video where I really cracked the code, where I had to talk about our game, assuming no one had ever heard of it. And I had to make it we were a video game. So what hooked people in was seeing characters and saying actually as little as possible. So the kind of formula that I created was pitch the game like it's a mini trailer and don't go into detail about what it actually does or how to do it. I want you to see a very cool visual. Yeah, and your imagination will do a way better job pitching it to yourself than anything I could do. So it was a lot of less is more. Know what visuals immediately capture the eye. And yeah, from there, it's you repeating that pattern. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
100%.
Yeah.
I feel like you, as any founder, was wearing many hats, right? Yes, you're the co-founder. You also happen to be like the TikTok, the social media star, creating the content, producing the content, going through onboarding with customers, checking the Discord. Like, you're just doing so many things. Of which creating content is one small piece of the founder journey and your responsibilities. Did you ever find at times where you just sort of didn't have the energy to keep creating content, or how did you stay creative and focused and excited to keep creating content on the side of the everything else that it is to be a founder?
Yeah. There was a very frank conversation where me and my co-founders were like, trying to really determine what are my roles and responsibilities, because we couldn't deny that when Sara goes on TikTok, we suddenly have an insane spike of users. Right. This is the only important thing for our company. So that we actually entirely restructured my role so that I could devote as much time as humanly possible to just focusing on top of funnel and making sure that that flow of you see a TikTok, a tweet, whatever it is, to getting into the game was as tight as possible.
That's incredible that you actually restructured your role to actually more solely focus just on the content side.
Again, it's existential when it's at that, like, what do I have going for me except for saying X amount of people use my product? You know?
That's a game changer. I'd love to know, obviously this was back in, 2020 time, but would love to know, maybe whether it's now or back then, how do you think AI would have changed or helped you be able to do this back when you were growing your audience and like leveraging social to grow?
So we started getting access to, the AI tools that we would recognize now, generative AI, in the last, I would say, 1.5, 2 years of my company. So a little over halfway through. And at that point, our company had, a thriving community. We were growing steadily, and we were starting to explore a new product, a new kind of direction in games. We were exploring mobile games at the time. And we needed to find this new direction as quickly as possible. We can't have 35 people just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. We need to give them something to do. And so the way that we tested what we were going to develop next was by using generative AI. So we had this really interesting process of iterating our next product, where we allowed anyone on the team to team up together and kind of pitch the next direction. And then I would take their game pitch and I would create a fake Instagram ad for them, a fake TikTok for them using Midjourney. And so I was suddenly making ads for games that didn't exist and putting them into Instagram and, put some paid ads behind it. And that's how we tested. People clicked on this. They didn't click on that. It was A/B testing using Midjourney. Wow. Obviously, it still took, someone with my skill set and capacity, but within 2 months, we had our direction and we knew exactly what characters people wanted to see. We knew exactly what title worked the best, what art style, what color schemes even. There wasn't anything we left to chance because we knew if we were committing, we were going to go all the way.
Love that. I love the notion of never leaving anything to chance to make sure that, you had a predictable outcome. Any startup has a relatively small team. Everyone wears many hats. You obviously were like leading the charge on the content creation, but you're talking about multiple platforms, TikTok, Twitter, multiple pieces of content, churning out volume, because every time you knew that when you were posting, you were seeing this growth spike. How did you go about managing the content, like in terms of like building your content strategy, your content pillars, making sure that everything was actually being shipped? Like, what did that process look like? And did you use any tools, whether it was Notion or anything else, to try and actually manage your content and keep yourself organized and on track?
Fun fact, I'm not sure if actually you're aware of this, Ayomi. We were interviewed as a company by Notion way back in the day for how we were using
I was not
Notion.
aware of that.
Yeah, I think our interview is still up somewhere.
Wait, I love
Our,
that. I love that Notion lore. I'm going to have to go check the blog out.
yeah, our company from day one was entirely built on Notion, and we were a fully remote company too. I was running art meetings on Notion. We were tracking, what do you call it, goals around raising on Notion. We were tracking marketing campaigns, production timelines, all of that stuff. So that's to say, like, we were very involved with using Notion, and that's kind of how I got hooked. And when we walked away from our startup and decided that chapter was closed, I very frankly told my friends I could only see myself getting a, quote unquote real job
Right.
at two companies, Nintendo or Notion. And Nintendo wasn't
Look where we
hiring,
are.
but yeah, here we are now.
Here we are at Notion, and obviously now
Yeah,
you're a key part of our social team at Notion. So I feel like that's
yeah.
very much come full circle. Would love to know some of the insights around your playbook, around how we grow as
Hmm.
Notion on socials. Because again, I know that Notion has a really strong community. We obviously are we are well established on many
Hmm.
platforms, but I know we're still growing, and this is a key top of funnel channel for us as well. Would love to know some of your tips for your playbook.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I wanted to join Notion was I was ready for a different kind of challenge. I know what it's like to go from 0 to 1 million, but
Right.
and what about that next stage of growth that any successful company hopes to be in? This is the next chapter you're racing towards. You have to really understand why your audience is coming to each channel and be really, really rigorous about the feedback you're getting from them. You can't just it's very easy with someone who is scrolling through socials every day, constantly getting like an insane amount of feedback all the time. Like the notifications that we have on our different channels are really quite something. The sun never sets on Notion. We have a very global community,
We do,
and
truly.
recognizing it's not so easy to be like, I'll just make a pop culture joke. Oh, I'll just, be tweeting every day at 9 a.m. But then, well, your folks over in South Asia are never seeing it, and your replies are in languages you don't know how to read. And how do you talk to such a
Right.
varied audience? Um, at the end of the day, there are some principles, which is they will tell you. They will tell you what they're here on this platform for. And you have to actually hear them out and listen and not just be like, oh, that's someone complaining about a product update. No, they're telling you they expected to hear certain updates or feedback, and you have to factor that in. Something that is really interesting in the world of social media marketing that I'm seeing more and more across other brands as well is people are going against your initial instinct to be like, oh, my community is all here and I can hold them in one place, and they're actually dividing up their brand profiles. So for example, we now have a Notion Mail Twitter. We have a Notion
We do.
Calendar Twitter. We have a Notion AI subpage on LinkedIn. We are have a specific Notion Japan Instagram. We are now understanding it's time to go back almost to the beginning, which is return to the smaller communities, return to the smaller
Right.
circles, so that when people talk to us, we really can hear them.
I think that's really meaningful. And we do have a growing global audience. In fact, that's what
Hmm.
makes us such a strong proposition as a product as well. We want to be able to support, obviously, our community around the clock. And social never sleeps.
Social never sleeps.
Um,
They
ta-
never sleep.
and I think in return, you also, therefore, Sarah, obviously probably never sleep either. Um, would love to know when you're thinking about, you mentioned obviously going back to basics right now with
Hmm.
Notion and kind of going into those niche communities by country, by product.
Yeah.
What were some of the learnings from building your company and leveraging social that you've applied to Notion? And if you could go back to start again, what would you do differently potentially if you were building now?
It's hard to say. Knowing the tools that I have at my disposal, I'm almost I don't want to look at it with such rosy glasses, but honestly think like we were in the right place at the right time. Like I don't know if we could have pulled off the same playbook again in 2025. The state of social media and organic reach is actually a lot harder.
Yeah.
And I think like my only word of advice for people trying to do organic social is be brave and keep trying new things because it's not as easy as it used to be. I know that's a bit away from the question that you asked, but it's hard to say what I would do differently for the better because I can only think of how things are differently for worse. You feel me?
Yes. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Speaking of giving advice, because I like the advice of, being brave, being bold, trying to do organic social and putting yourself out there. Is there any other piece of advice that you would give to a founder starting their journey now? Whether that relates specifically to like growing organically and leveraging social to grow, or just in general as a builder trying to start out.
It's gonna sound corny, but you really gotta stop being obsessed with numbers. You really gotta remember every single person who hits follow, like, comment, all of that stuff, signs up. It's very easy to start seeing people as graphs, and you gotta remember someone took time and took a chance on your product, and it is always worth it to talk to them. It's always worth it to know why. And the second you stop seeing your users as people, or you are tempted to belittle results that you don't really want to get, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah, you really can't forget that every single person here is like a real person who
Everyone
spent
counts.
minutes, hours of their day. Yeah. And I get like very sentimental and very serious about that. Like it is the reason I've stayed in social media marketing. I have a myriad of skill sets, and I kept telling people like the next thing I work on has to be user facing. It's the only thing I look forward to.
That I love that. I love the passion and energy. And just also just remember, like, you're right. Every user and number is actually a real person who spent time on your product, trying to get to know it, trying to get to grips with it. And whether they loved it or hate it, either way, it's still so important to connect with that user and understand the why behind it so that you can build something great.
And truly, like, if you don't care about what you're posting, you don't care about how you're messaging things, and you aren't putting that much heart or thought into how you're managing your channels, people can tell. People
Yeah.
are very smart and very intuitive, and yeah, maybe they can't specifically articulate why they're churning from your product, or they can't
But they
articulate
feel
to
it.
you. They feel it. They feel when you don't care.
Yeah.
And that's why you will often see the largest brand accounts are getting, trickles of engagement, because they know if you talk to that brand, no one's listening.
Yeah.
That social media manager is going home at the end of the day and, turning off their notifications. They don't have any kind of system to even reply to users and talk to them. And it's one of the points of pride that I have here at Notion is you guys still have that early stage value for the average user and for the average community. I see Ivan and Akshay replying directly to people all the time.
I was literally about to say, I think
Yeah.
that's one of my highlights, because obviously we have internally a social media channel that, the whole company uses. And whenever we get, user feedback or a question, whether it's on Twitter or another platform, suddenly you'll see Ivan actually jump in, either respond themselves or tag the right person and say, hey, can we make sure we get a response out as soon as we can? Because every user counts. Every user has a voice, and it's important for us to build that relationship. So yeah, guess you heard it here first. Notion, we never sleep here either. Always got to respond to our customers and our users.
I might not reply right away, but we'll definitely. I will always promise that I've read it, even if I can't reply to every single one.
I think, yeah. Oh, and I think that still goes a long way, and to make sure we're keeping our community top of mind, because that's ultimately who we're here to build for. Well, I think that's a wrap on this episode. Sara, thank you so much for joining. This is incredible to learn about your experience building and the growth journey you have. I actually want to get back online posting again, so I'm going to have to hit you up afterwards to get some social media tips from you.
Oh, that is the only piece of advice I'd give to anyone. Like, just do it. Just start. Like, what is our expression in startups? Your default dead. Who cares? Post the weird thing. Who cares? If no one sees it, that's the worst case scenario. Delete it and try again another day. There's no stakes here.
Yeah, no stakes game here. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.